Hi, I'm Steve Robinson with iLife Technologies, and welcome to our podcast series where we interview industry leaders and executives to talk about carrier and distribution connectivity. Today we have Kartik, CIO with LIMRA, here to share some of his expertise, in addition to Nelson, who's the CEO of iLife. Welcome, Kartik.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with both of you. Thank you for having me. It's a privilege and an honor. I love the fact that you guys are bringing industry leaders together to socialize on the thought leadership. This is a really, really smart industry with really, really smart people, and LIMRA LOMA being in the nucleus of the industry, 81 countries across the world. We have the privilege to be able to bring in all this knowledge and distribute it. The fact that you guys are doing this series is just remarkable.
Awesome.
Yeah, lovely to have you here. So I love to kick off the conversation by taking full advantage of your unique position to have insights about the industry. And you know this, Kartik. I've always felt like because of the amazing work you do at LIMRA, you have a unique perspective where you're not a solutions provider, you're not a vendor. So you have no horse in the race. You get to see what everyone's goals are versus the challenges preventing them from getting there. And you can have a really unbiased, objective perspective. So tell us a little bit about there's been so much talk in the industry about where we want to go: modernization, AI, data, connectivity. But I think not enough talk is around, so what are the challenges preventing us from getting where we want to go? So tell us a little bit about the challenges you see across the industry.
Yeah, that's a great question, Nelson. So it's a multidimensional problem, right? So let's beat off the first fundamental issue. It's culture. It's deep-rooted organizational culture to be able to effectuate change in a sustained manner. When you think about things like modernization, legacy systems. Look, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but legacy systems are going to continue being the albatross around the neck of the industry, right? I think the challenge for us is to be able to make sustained investments in paying down our technical debt, in modernizing these systems. Because let's be honest, every single modernization effort goes probably 2x, 3x as long, probably costs 1x, 2x, 3x as much. Right?
They're definitely not measured in months.
They're not measured in months at all. Absolutely not measured in months. And then what happens is our organizational culture snaps in and we go, hey, you know what? Is it really worth it for us to continue doing this? Is the juice worth the squeeze? You get into a next round on funding cycle. You get to the next round on budgeting cycle. And something shiny comes along that we focus and fixate on, right? So it's building that muscle to be able to focus and prioritize and continue paying down our legacy systems, right? So number one is culture. Number two is the fact that our industry has done one thing better than any other industry. And that is we've operated in silos, right? So for the past decade, I think we should give this industry a ton of credit, right? We have invested a good sum of time, treasure, and resource into modernization, into these digital transformations. And digital transformations were interesting because for the longest time, you couldn't have like a standard definition of what a digital transformation is, like this nebulous amoeba-like creature, right?
It's almost like a overly used and overly broad term.
100%.
I was
Overly
just
used.
laughing and thinking,
It could mean any.
Yeah.
How many times have you heard digital transformation from all the carriers that you work with, and it has a different meaning each time?
And it had a different meaning each time
For different silos.
different silos.
Yeah.
Within a large.
Exactly.
Yes.
It could mean anything for anyone.
Yeah.
For any agenda.
Yes. Well, it's kind of like trying to nail Jello to the wall, right? It's really hard to be able to articulate. But even within that, at the broadest sense, from a digital transformation, what carriers were looking to do is modernize, is transform, right? Is to be able to get us into the digital age, and we have made significant progress. So let's give ourselves credit for that. The challenge is once you operate in silos culturally as a firm, as a company, you modernize and digitize one part of the business, without recognizing the other part of the business, there are unintended consequences, right? So you might, it's a process of transference. My technical debt, my burdens are now transferred as business debt to somebody else. And it's created this disjointed roller coaster effect, right? Mm-hmm. So where one part of the industry is modernized and the other part isn't. So problem number two manifests itself when you come to business processes. Number three, when we think about legacy modernizations or platform modernizations, it's not just about the technology. It's probably not even as much about organizational culture. Well, it kind of is, but it's about processes. And bear with me for a minute, right? So, because we're all very special people, right? We're special, and our needs are unique. Our needs are special. Narrator, they're not unique or special, right? A commercial off-the-shelf product in the industry stays a commercial off-the-shelf product for 5 minutes after you purchase it, right? You implement it into your ecosystem, and then what happens? You customize it and make it bespoke to something that's completely unrecognizable than what it was when it was on the shelf, right? So our industry has built up a pretty sound practice of purchasing these commercial off-the-shelf products, making them bespoke to our unique needs versus the other way around. And then what happens is, not every product does everything we want it to do. So what do carriers do? We implement workarounds, right? And over the arc of history, these workarounds become institutionalized, right? They are now part of the corporate lexicon. They are part of your business process. So when you're replacing systems, when you're modernizing systems, it's not just about technology for technology. It's not even about people with new technology. You have to unwind all of the technical debt, all of the business processes that you've built around these legacy systems, and then establish a new business process. And again, that's where culture kicks in, right? And what does Peter Drucker say? Culture eats strategy for breakfast, and that's where you get the significant pushback. And I think those are the top three challenges that I could think about.
Modernization, and as we said, like digital transformation, modernization, it could potentially mean different things for different people, but the siloed problem you talk about feels a lot like the issues we had in the tech industry. From our side of the equation, a decade and a half ago, where it wasn't that long ago, even in the tech industry, engineers would simply build stuff that engineers thought would be good for many times other engineers, and business would disagree, right?
Yeah.
And then processes, you could call agile or user-centric, customer-centric processes came along where engineers decided, hey, maybe we should begin with the customer and user in mind and then work our way back. And writing the code is the last thing to happen.
100%.
It feels like maybe our industry at large is going on that journey, right? Maybe just a few years after tech.
Yeah. It is. So a couple of things to note, right? So, we talked about silos and these digital transformations being effectuated in silos. I think carriers need to take a step back, and they are, right? We are on our journey, not mature, but we're getting there, right? To be able to look across the value chain, keeping the customer in mind, right? So, in 2020, we partnered with BCG and did customer experience, right? Research on customer experience, CX across the value chain. And it's a testament to our industry taking a step back and going, hey, you know what? We need to get a lot more customer centric. Now, what's interesting about life, annuities, worksite benefits, as compared to other facets of insurance, property and casualty, for example, right, is the number of touch points and engagements that you have with your customers. And if you think about financial services, you zoom out, right? Think about retail banking. Think about the number of touch points that you have with your customer if you're in retail banking. Think about the number of touch points you have with your customers when you're in P&C, right? Which is not necessarily comparable very different to life and annuities, where it's a set it and forget it mindset. But you know what though? We have customers who need engagement, who want to be engaged. It's not just the people in our general demographic, right? And now, Steve, you have a birthday coming up, your 37th birthday imminently, right? 37th birthday. But people on the younger end of the demographic, right? They want to engage. They would like to be engaged.
I think not only younger consumers, but also younger distributors.
100%, right?
And a different type of distributor. A distributor from the past was just solely an insurance agent
100%.
that grew up in that business.
Yep.
Today,
Yep.
the average insurance agent is doing multiple jobs, whether it's other financial services or multi-line.
Yeah, the independent agent, if you will, as not part of a captive workforce, right? So I think it's important for us to understand the generational shifts that, we kept talking about it as this far-fetched esoteric concept. It's here. So when somebody says, "Oh, I'm a child of the '80s," and like, dude, you're 40 years old, right? So this is a very
Can you be a
different
child
generation.
when you're 40?
Hey, some of us never
I'm
really
a child
grew
of
up,
the 80s. I
right?
was born in the 80s.
So, some of us never really grew up, right, Steve? Age is just a
I'm waiting for the Superman shirt to come out at some point.
At some point, maybe at the end of the podcast.
Okay.
We'll save that for the end of the podcast. But it's what's interesting is I think this demographic shift is forcing us to think about our engagements with our customers very differently than we have in the past, and I think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
We used to all own software on-prem, right? There was no such thing as SaaS. So we will all own code bases. But you and I both come from technical background. The moment you touch that code base and you customize it, other people can no longer fix it for you, not in a reasonable amount of time. Or people would take a cloud-based SaaS solution and then either take it on-prem, customize the code, or we would have custom hard-coded workarounds. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about what are the issues with these customized or hard-coded workarounds and what's required to unwind that? And for our audience who may not be familiar with what is technical debt really, or what's hard-coding and why is it bad? Why is hard-coded customization problematic? Maybe it isn't.
Yeah, a hard-coded customized solution is not problematic until it is, and when it is, it poses
totally agree with that.
Significant risk.
It always feels like it's not going to be because it gets a difficult
You
problem
built
done
perfectly what you need. But
for the
there's
moment.
change.
For the moment, right?
I was saying, there's always change.
A hard-coded solution takes much shorter to get the short-term goal done.
Exactly. So listen, I started my technology career as a software developer, right? So I think they call it slinging code now, Nelson. So just for us to be a little bit hipper, right? So I used to sling code back in the late 90s, right? And besides the fact that it always worked on my machine, it's easy for me to get from point A to point B and just get my code done by hard coding values versus doing the right thing, right? And that comes with a level of maturity, and experience, right? The longer you've been in.
And also long-term planning.
A long-term planning, exactly.
It's
right?
really difficult to not hard code something
Yeah.
if you're really trying to optimize for what's got to be done like next month.
Yeah, exactly.
So the guy that's not slung code, me,
Yeah.
is it like this ownership deal where like if you've done that coding and you built it, you kind of want to have that pride and ownership in it, where as a SaaS model, it's a different structure? Does that make sense or not?
A little bit, right? So let's demystify what we mean by technical debt and what we mean by hard coding.
And whether you think hard coding could be a part of that technical debt that needs to be unwinded.
Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure, 100%, right? So
And whether that has anything to do with, say, the reusability of a custom workaround.
Correct. So if I'm hard coding something, Steve, if I'm a software developer, right, I just want to get the code done. So I'm going to take shortcuts and workarounds. No one except me is going to know
Your secrets along the way.
Correct. How to manage or maintain that code.
You mean software engineers take a shortcut?
Oh, never. Not the good ones. Not the best ones, right? Not anybody I work with, by the way. So the challenge is no one except you knows how to fix it when things go south, and I promise you things will go south, right? That usually happens when you're trying to build on code 5 years from now, and somebody else is trying to maintain it and build on it, right? Your solution is going to be a house of cards. So
is that why at all insurance carriers there's always 2 or 3 people that are going to be there forever because they're the ones that know that secret in that code, and you always have to go to that person to know how to fix this?
Yes and no. That's also a function of the actual the programming platform being used, right? So it's a little bit less of a problem these days, although you can do it, right, with some of the newer technologies. But think about it, right? In the 60s, you had COBOL, right? Mm-hmm. And COBOL was pervasive and ubiquitous, and COBOL didn't necessarily allow for scale or scalability or maintainability or long-term planning, because that's what
it wasn't even meant for that.
It wasn't meant for that, right? But what happened is there are like 5 COBOL programmers left in America, right? And their dance card got punched up during COVID when the government was issuing all these the COVID checks, right? And Governmental systems are COBOL. But you know what else is COBOL? Lots of carriers,
Absolutely.
policy admin systems today. They were implemented in the 60s and the 70s, and long tail policies, right? So if it ain't broke, why
It's
fix
actually
it?
kind of impressive how many of them actually, I know they're old and need to be modernized, but it's on another, from just an engineering perspective, it's impressive that they still work.
Oh my gosh, 100%.
Like
right?
there's a lot to be desired, but the fact that it works and it's consistent in how they work.
Are there patches and fixes that you do along the way to keep them running, or is
You
that
do. So what happens is with some of these legacy systems, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, right? If you crack open a system today, a policy admin, let's take a policy admin system. It's kind of like a geological dig through the eras of software, right? So you're going to have your COBOL system in the heart, and then you got mergers and acquisitions. So you got somebody else's systems and gobbledygook, right? You got object oriented in there somewhere. You got Java. You got the new generation languages.
You're going to
you
have
got
different
SAS
versions of
solutions.
mainframes.
Oh, 100%. So it's just Steve, it's a nightmare to manage.
Sure.
It's a nightmare to maintain. It's a nightmare to augment. So even though these systems work, like set it and forget it, you can't get data in and out. You can't integrate it with anything else in your ecosystem. So if you're going to implement a brand new policy admin system based in the cloud with any vendor, and you're trying to make cogent sense of your full block of business, right? It's going to be really, really difficult for you to do so. Data conversions from these old systems to new systems with all the bespoke business rules are going to be challenging. So it's a whole. Don't even get me started on the cybersecurity front, right? In terms
That's a whole
of
nother
protecting. That's
yeah.
a whole nother. A whole nother kettle of fish.
It's interesting. I mean, I would jump in. It's like, carrier and distribution connectivity is kind of what we're talking about. And you're talking about these older systems that carriers have, but all of this new modern distribution. So how do they connect?
Yeah.
I mean, that seems like
And
who's
therein-
doing the cobalt coding
Yeah.
to get that new partner connected?
So therein lies the 64. Let's pivot for a little bit, and we'll come back to modernization, right? Look, anybody, any carrier, you can go swipe your corporate credit card today and implement a policy, a brand spanking new policy admin system, right? Easy peasy lemon squeezy. You know what's not easy peasy lemon squeezy is integrating that policy admin system with the tapestry of everything else that you have in your ecosystem. Getting your CRM system to talk to your financial system to talk to your ERP. Like these are underwriting across the value chain. So you're all have the same taxonomy, you're speaking the same language without having to create a tertiary data warehouse or a data lake that eventually turns into a data swamp. You don't have to do those things if you just architect and engineer your ecosystem in a way that things are cogent and they're integrated without having to do a lot of cheese moving, if that makes sense, right? Which is where APIs are so salient because of the value proposition that they offer.
Talking about claims, I think claims, commissions, underwriting.
How do all these things get along?
Yeah, or telephone systems in call centers. Kartik, what do you see as the challenge for carriers to make all this work in a way that is both manageable from a carrier perspective, but number two, ideal from an experience perspective? What are the challenges to accomplish that?
Yeah, so going back to where we started, right? I think number one challenge is kind of cultural, but it's cultural in trying to accomplish a balance. A balance because, look, every division, an organization has their priorities, right? They have their vision, they have their goals, they have their priorities. Each division has their priorities descending from that, but the interpretation of each organizational priority across the value chain could be disparate, could be different, right? Your priority, if you're an underwriting, Nelson, right? Your priority could be, hey, I'm going to implement an automated accelerated underwriting program where 50% of all new policies that I underwrite are going to go through this automated program, or I'm going to achieve straight through processing or whatever else, right? If you're in distribution, maybe you're focused on timely commission payouts to your agents or advisors. I mean, those two things theoretically should be congruent, but they sometimes we can get into our organizational silos where our hats going, these are my set of priorities, I'm going to focus on that. What happens with that is it manifests in how you implement your platforms and your digital policies and your digitization efforts, right? Yeah. So you're going to deal with one set of vendors, you're going to deal with another set of vendors, and never shall they intersect, right?
Yeah.
And that becomes this organizational siloed mentality results in siloed systems that don't talk to each other. And then when you're trying to integrate these things at an enterprise scale, which is critical because you need an enterprise purview, that's when the antibodies come in, right? Because at that point, you're not just trying to replace a system, you're trying to replace business processes that are baked in and can be extremely disruptive because you're not just disruptive to one unit, you're disruptive across the value chain. But guess what? I mean, if you have a way to integrate these things in a lucid manner where you can respect business processes within a division with minimal
there's
friction.
always large amounts of business rules and logic.
Correct. But if you can minimize the friction in that, right, and be able to integrate these disparate systems in a broader sense, I mean, to quote Guy Fieri, I don't know if you've had Guy Fieri quoted on your podcast before.
This might be the first time.
It might be the first time, right? Certainly won't be the last, right? That could be like winner chicken dinner, right? I think that's important. I think it's important for us to be sensitive to that as well.
Totally agree with you on the silo part where I know a lot of people talk about hard coding or technical debt like it's a dirty word, and it is problematic in some sense. But like you said, I think a lot of times it wasn't intentional. Even the tech industry used to have a hard coding problem because when people work in silos, you have siloed objectives, and if all you needed to complete was your objective, versus everyone else's, well, hard coding is not really as much of an issue because it just needs to work for my goal for now.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was by design. Everybody, like back in the 90s, early 2000s, even within the tech industry, it was very, very common for engineers to hard code a lot of things, and they would call things like, quote unquote, integrated.
Yeah.
To integrate two things in and of itself is not difficult. It's not novel. It's not difficult. The difficult part is how does this integration work for everyone else where there's not a static value. And it was also customary for people to hard code something and then not have documentation.
Oh gosh.
Which is why things live in what we call like tribal knowledge.
Yeah. Institutional knowledge is, but
that used to be the industry norm.
Yes.
Like not even insurance industry norm, tech industry norm.
You said something earlier. I'm going to pull a thread, right? You talked about what else was the norm. We talked about cloud and SaaS being the model of the future or the model of the present, right?
Do you believe SaaS is the future?
Well, every single vendor.
As opposed to managing your own code base on-prem.
Correct.
Everyone managing your own 100%. Customized.
Solve problems that are going to positively influence your customers and your employees. Don't solve the problems that everybody else is already solving, right? Mutualize that problem solving, and which is why,
It's such a key
100%
industry statement. Why is it problematic to solve a problem yourself with your own proprietary code base and build everything in-house unique to you on a problem that everyone else is already trying to solve? What is the problem with that?
So the simplest answer is, would you really want to build your own word processor or just go out and get Google Docs or Microsoft Word? Simple as that. I mean, like
when you put it in those terms, it's very, very easy to say, well, I'm not going to rewrite Microsoft Word.
Yeah, then why
At least I'm not going to.
Why would you rewrite? Look, at the end of the day, right, everybody's got, it's flavors of vanilla, right? You get French vanilla, you get vanilla bean, you get the fancy Tahitian vanilla. At the end of the day, it's still vanilla, right? Why would you want, like policy admin systems are going to do policy administration, right? Why would you want to customize and bespoke build that yourself? Which is a palpable shift in our mindset than it was 10, 15 years ago, not just with
the default method used to be, let's just build it.
Let's just build it. Exactly. Build it and they won't come, right?
There weren't as many choices to actually go acquire
or buy. That's exactly it. There was no SaaS per se.
Right.
There was no cloud per se. So you were forced into building stuff yourself, learning from others potentially, but you had to build it yourself. Think about it. 10, 15 years ago, most carriers had data centers, and some still do, right? And we thought of data centers as a competitive advantage. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
Today, I don't think
for a while they were.
Correct. Exactly. They were. They were assets,
yeah.
But that asset has now pivoted. I won't call them liabilities. They're not. But right now, software is a commodity, right? Why would you want to build something or own a data center? And, obviously the answer is somewhere hybrid in the middle, right? Yeah, cloud for some things, on-prem for others. But look, if somebody, and that's, think about LIMRA and LOMA, right? Instead of everybody solving their own problems, this is why the association is such a vibrant association and has been for an aggregate of like 200 years of knowledge between LIMRA and LOMA, is because we help the industry mutualize the problem solving. Instead of everybody trying to figure it out themselves, let's just all figure it out together and then compete where it makes sense. Do not compete where it doesn't. And for the vast majority of these commodity things, it does not make sense to compete.
Yeah. Even for us as a tech company, we very much believe that we don't need to build everything ourselves.
No.
We focus on the differentiator, our core competency.
Yes.
That means we're not setting up our own data centers. I don't need to rebuild AWS. And I love that you bring examples from other industries like PNC, credit cards, and I'm even thinking of the automobile industry. So this is sort of far away from life and annuity, but if you think about it, the largest car makers on earth, so the Toyotas, the Mercedes, they don't make their own tires.
Of course not.
I'm sure they have the money to if they wanted to, but they don't because all the tire companies are already solving that.
Yeah.
Actually, car companies don't make a lot of their own parts. They don't make their own stereo. They definitely don't make their own GPS software these days.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see less and less of that even being in the car.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
And the more we think about these other industries, the more it kind of makes sense. Should Toyota be making Toyota branded tires?
Why?
I'm not sure that's why people buy Toyotas.
Right. Yeah, agreed.
We've been talking a lot about carrier and distribution and connectivity. And one thing that keeps surfacing back is the internal connectivity at a carrier. And so it's really not just your connectivity with distribution. It's like, how are you communicating inside your own four walls to then deliver a better experience for that distribution? Yeah. There's so much that has to happen behind all of the different admin systems, all of the different functions and tasks that happen to support, underwrite, pay a claim. All of that's critical that those systems work together.
Yes.
Equally as important as then you can connect to the distribution who's out, the front line selling product for you.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
Yeah.
The more disjointed your internal processes are,
right.
the less integrated your internal processes are, I promise you it's going to be wrought with friction between you and your customer, whether or you and your distributor. There's no doubt, right? It's just like anything happens internally is going to manifest externally. It's inevitable.
Everyone talks about, how do we utilize AI, Gen AI or any other form of AI, which models better and all that. And I think all that's fine and good. AI is going to change certain aspects of the industry, but Kartik, what do you think are the obstacles for insurance companies to realize the actual benefits of AI? Like what actually creates AI readiness, and what are the issues that if you don't solve, AI is not actually going to help you very much?
So a couple of things, and I'm just saying this to establish some level of credibility, right? I have a PhD focused on AI, and I have a 568-page book on best practices with AI. And
that was a really good question for him, then.
So some of this is based on me being immersed in all things AI for at least the past 4 or 5 years. Look, AI in our industry is not new, right? We've been doing AI across the value chain, whether it's rudimentary chatbots, whether it's to reduce friction, operational efficiency, whether it's in underwriting, right? Automated accelerated underwriting. So Gen AI in Q1 of 2023 obviously exploded, and it just thrust AI into the lexicon, and it's primarily because the price of entry is so cheap, right? It's been able to democratize AI.
Although the concept of Gen AI is not novel.
Correct. It's not. I think though it just captured hearts and minds, and I think we've had this conversation before. My personal theory is anything that starts off in our personal lives and then permeates over to our professional lives has a lot more staying power than the converse, which is why Steve doesn't have a BlackBerry, and hopefully neither do you, right?
I love my BlackBerry.
Who didn't love their BlackBerry?
So
the BlackBerry
great.
Fingers. I mean, the BlackBerries were the best.
I have never had a BlackBerry.
BlackBerry,
I had a Nokia.
BlackBerries were.
I think we just said how old we are and how young Kia is very
that's
openly
true.
by not ever
That's
having
true.
a BlackBerry.
I was old enough to have a BlackBerry, but I couldn't afford one at the time.
Oh yes, indeed. I had a standard issue from the company.
Same,
so,
and it was the greatest.
So it was the best. So to answer your question from an AI perspective, look, there are some bedrock fundamental things that organizations need to keep in mind. AI will transform our industry, us as a species for certain, but will transform our industry. Generative AI is going to lead to operational efficiencies. It's going to lead to productivity increases comparable to nothing we've ever seen before, and it's going to continue to keep cascading. And look, out of, just making it up, like 100 use cases, right? 99 of them might fail, and that's okay, right?
And I think a lot of the use cases may not be chatbots.
100%.
They are
Completely
not.
agree.
They
They're not
are.
chatbots.
They are not ChatGPT wrappers.
They're not ChatGPT wrappers, but they will add immense value to our industry across the value chain. There's no doubt about that, right? But there are some bedrock things that organizations need to keep in mind before even we double down on AI, right? To be able to find sustained success with AI, there are some levers that organizations need to pull. LIMRA and LOMA, we have the AI governance group. We're blessed to have about 70 business and technology executives from almost 40 carriers represented of all sizes, lines of business. And we're going to define what good looks like for our industry, absent regulation, absent regulatory frameworks, right? We're going to define what good governance looks like. We're going to develop tools and scorecards and benchmarks and soon to be published research around a current state for the industry. But while that is happening, while that activity is happening, what my message to the industry has been to urge us, look, AI is seductive. Very seductive, because the promise of AI is there. It will be transformative, there's no doubt. But there's some bedrock things that we still need to focus on. Number one, it's culture, right? Your organizational culture will change, will have to change. The work that people do will change. If there are some rote, repeatable operational things that you do as part of your job, I promise you they will be automated by virtue of AI. This is not a headcount reduction play. This is not an FTE reduction play. It's an FTE reskilling play, right? Imagine what you can do, Nelson, with 10% additional capacity in your day, right? But all of that results in change, and people want change, but no one wants to change, right? So organizational and shepherding that cultural change is going to be important.
I've always believed in that as well. It's not necessarily for headcount reduction. It's like when the
How do you do your job better?
When the calculator was introduced, it did not reduce the number of math teachers that we needed in the country. It just meant math teachers could now teach in a different way that was more efficient.
That's a good analogy.
Leveraging a resource.
Yeah,
but there was always a certain amount of people who were resistant to change because they lived in fears where they felt like, well, now that there are calculators, these calculator companies are coming for my job.
Yeah,
right.
And therefore I should resist this.
Yeah.
But that's really not the reality.
That's not the reality. So
I can't think of one teacher that's lost their job because of the invention of the calculator. I literally cannot.
Correct. The second one is data, all things data, as I know preaching to the choir, but my fundamental belief is you cannot have great AI with bad data. It's going to yield garbage data, right? Garbage AI.
In, garbage out.
Garbage in, garbage out. So I think that's more accentuated now more than ever. If you think about a carrier and the amount of data carriers have, data is everywhere, nowhere, somewhere, and must be there, all concurrent.
I bet you will get all of these answers by asking different silos.
Correct. And then the quality of data is always suspect, right? So data literacy is going to be important. AI literacy, germane to data, is going to be important, but focus on data. I think it's going to be important. Where do you find data? How do you curate data? How do you ensure that it's optimal quality, even before it percolates into your AI systems?
If data is everywhere and nowhere in a different formats, some are more usable than others, or some might not plainly be not usable at all. What does that mean for an end user on the value or quality of AI if data is in that state?
So you can't trust in it, right? If you can't explain to me how your AI system got from point A to point B and track the genealogy or provenance of that data, I can't trust in the output.
You might think certain things are hallucinations.
Correct. You might say, do these 5 things to achieve 50% increase in sales. But I'm like, I don't know if it was bad data that resulted in this output for the AI to hallucinate and wholesale. Hallucinate is where AI doesn't know stuff, so it does causality and correlation and wholesale makes things up, right?
And AI will make things up.
And AI
if it
will
is
make
not
things
sure
up.
if the data is good or usable.
Exactly, right?
Kind of goes back to the source of truth concept. Is where's the source of the
100%.
truth in that situation?
So data is going to be continuing to be invaluable in all things. Number 3 is legacy systems. Look, I've been championing us and advocating for us to pay down our technical debt and legacy systems and modernizations, because just expect that you're going to find surprises, right? If somebody tells you it's going to take a year to modernize a system, a year is the best guess, right? And again, I don't mean to be a skeptic, but it's not their fault. It's just the nature of the beast. You are going to find something that's going to push those dates out.
And
but
it's likely not going to take just a year.
Correct. And
It's like a home renovation. Once you pull back the drywall and look behind the walls, you don't know what's there until you open it up.
And you need to be sustained and intentional about keeping focus on that. And number 4 is, we talked about culture. The flip side to that is education as well for employees, right? There are people still today, 25 years in, who don't know how to Google successfully, right? So the best way for you to get any value out of your AI programs, your generative AI programs successfully, you don't have to make people prompt engineers, people who are actually adept at querying GPT systems, large language models, generative AI systems, but to be able to make them AI literate, right? This is how you can interact with these tools to derive maximum value and benefit out of it, and how to do that safely and effectively. And that is very important. Every carrier has AI governance, AI policies, safe use policies, right? You want to make sure that your AI systems, your Gen AI systems, are free of bias and proxy discrimination for sure, are explainable and transparent for sure, but it's also most fundamentally important that your employees are not expatriating your intellectual property into public assets like ChatGPT.
And like you said earlier, I think the things are all correlated in cyclical logic. Culture matters. You want people to be AI literate. But if you can't trust your AI, it's very difficult to be AI literate. Correct. Like, what are you literate in?
Yes, exactly.
Like, what are we prompting, and what are we trusting out of the resulting output?
Yeah. So I would say these 4 things are the fundamental, the linchpin to ensure success with AI. While AI, you need a strategy, you need a vision, you need to tie it into business objectives, but these are the bedrock things that I think we shouldn't deviate from.
So I know we're all sports fans here. Would it be a fair analogy to say before you practice that windmill dunk, we should maybe get our fundamentals solid?
I completely agree with that.
Although the windmill dunk is very seductive.
The windmill dunk is very seductive, and
not that I have ever done one.
That was probably one of the few sport analogies that I could follow, right? But yes, the windmill dunk is impressive, but you need to get your fundamentals down.
So on that last piece, you talked about legacy system modernization, and I don't believe I have heard that theme mentioned by more carriers than maybe any other. What do you think is preventing people from actually modernizing it? Because I have heard countless carriers, countless people wanting to modernize. The key is wanting. But I feel like as an industry, we haven't quite gotten where we want to yet. Why is that difficult?
So what's stopping adoption?
Yeah. So several reasons, and we touched
upon. I have never met a carrier executive who said, "I don't want to modernize my legacy system." I literally have never met one, and I'm gonna guess you probably haven't either. So what's stopping people?
Yeah. So and we've touched upon the themes all through, right? But I think number one, these programs always go longer and are much more resource intensive than earlier planned. Number two, we talked about business processes, right? It's not just modernization of a technology, it's potentially reinvigorating or completely reimagining your business process. And that's where the resistance comes in, right? That's where things go much longer.
It's the change concept there.
It's the change concept and have unintended consequences. Number three, look, as much as I am a champion for modernization, there might be instances where it just doesn't make sense, right? And I'll give you an example. So if you have a policy admin system with 100 policies that date back to 30, 40, 50 years, And if you're implementing a brand new policy admin system in the cloud, you don't really have
Let's ride
to
those out.
invest. Let's ride those out, right? Exactly. So invest where it makes sense. And the reason why legacy modernization has gotten intertwined under this nebulous digital transformation bucket. So when people say digital transformation, it's implicitly code for we're also modernizing our system. So yeah, I think that's probably why some of this gets masqueraded. But the challenges are just the same. It's time, labor, effort, cost, unexpected surprises behind every aperture. And candidly, people, being as siloed as we are resistant to modernizing their own system, right? Like the problem's not there. Go talk to Bob or go talk to Sally. They need to improve. I'm all set, right? So don't.
We definitely see that a lot.
Exactly. Don't move my cheese, all right? Because then debris is everywhere. Get it? Debris.
Got it.
Do I have to go with that again? No. No. But again, that's the issue, right? You encounter this resistance between divisions in the same organization, house divided in the whole 9 yards.
So let me ask you a question. You travel extensively. You work with carriers across the globe. How different is it for just a traditional U.S.-based carrier versus carriers in other countries? Are we ahead, behind? What can we learn from them, and what can they learn from us?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. So, and I do my fair share of meeting with members across the world, whether in person or
Sure.
virtually. So, LIMRA and LOMA, again, one of the value prop of the association is we're operating in 81 countries, so we can hear. And the challenges, Steve, whether they're in China or Canada, whether they're in Mumbai or Melbourne, are very similar, right? Everybody's dealing with a flavor of similar challenges, and the similar challenges are can boil down to very simple things, right? Changing demographics, engaging with a new generation of consumers, modernization of legacy systems because everybody's got them, compliance with regulatory changes across the world. I mean, think about something simplistic, data privacy regulations across the world, and
That's the same everywhere.
The challenge is not the same everywhere, right? So if you're
The need is there.
the need is. If you're a large multinational carrier, you have to make sure that you're in compliance with BIPL in China. You have to make sure you're in compliance with GDPR in Europe, CASL in Canada. California, your home state, has CCPA and CPRA
My
too.
goodness, they do.
Right? So that's an ongoing challenge for carriers. So to answer your question, we can learn a lot from some of the carriers in Asia in terms of their technological progress. And the reason I say that is lots of countries in Asia completely skipped the laptop generation. They went from desktop and straight to mobility. And I do fundamentally believe, right, from a customer engagement, from a customer intimacy, from a customer delivery point of view, that media of delivery and engagement is going to be absolutely fundamentally critical for us in America as Generation Z becomes an integral part of our consumer base. I mean, this is a cohort that has had smartphones since elementary school, right? Think about just underwriting, for example, right? They're not going to wait 6 to 8 weeks for a policy to get underwritten. I mean, they start hyperventilating if the Amazon Prime delivery takes more than 2 days.
Delayed by
right?
2 days instead of one.
What kind of a podunk world do we live in, right? So those are the kind of things that they are figuring out and maybe have a little bit more of a leg up that we can learn from. And then obviously here in America, we have a mature, robust industry. So those firms seek to look at our business processes and our business practices, right? Because we have 150, 200 years worth of precedent for them to draw on.
It's kind of like looking at other geographies where I know we're publishing a paper together soon for Artifacts, where we also look at, other than other geographies, we look at other industries. And what are the experience or just really human expectations of other, even highly regulated financial industries there? So I know the paper's not published yet. Tell us a little bit about what's to come and what's going to be interesting and exciting about the paper.
I'm excited about the paper because at the end of the day, Nelson, right, there are other industries. We're not blazing new trail, right? We're replicating what other industries have done. It's the whole concept of simplification. Simplification is an underrated aspect of modernization, right? The staple,
another great
simple
quote from
button,
Kartik.
easy button, right? Simplification is definitely an understated aspect of modernization because people expect simple. I don't care.
And they should.
And they should. Because I don't care how complex it is for Amazon to be able to receive my order, process my order, get it to a distribution center, and for that truck to arrive. I don't care.
You're just
Click a
waiting for
button,
the
I just wait
doorbell
for
to
the thing
ring,
arrive.
right.
Exactly, right? So I think the insurance world, look, there are intentional complexities in our systems, on unintentional complexities in our systems. It is a complicated business, but we cannot pass that complicatedness to our consumers.
It should never be
It
that
should
curious
never
layer.
be their problem, right?
In fact, it should never be even on the application layer,
correct. So,
as in software applications.
Yes.
Or actually, even in terms of insurance applications.
insurance applications,
Right. Shouldn't
right?
be a part of
So,
it.
so I'm excited because what you touched upon in that paper that we co-authored, right? While we're focused on AI, and yes, we need to do that. But here's the whole world of simplification and how we can get there. So I'm pretty jazzed about that paper coming out. August, LIMRA Market Facts. I'll just add one more thing, touching upon a theme you talked about, Steve. The commonality that binds us across the world. Okay.
Yeah.
So I've worked in other industries, right? Unlike a lot of folks who go into insurance and that's their entire career, I've worked in education, I've worked in retail, in terms of technology, right? Defense, telecom. What really has drawn me and kept me in this industry, and the other industries have significant merit, and I don't want to impugn on that, but think about what we're doing here in our industry. It is about citizens, whether you're in China or Canada, you're in Cambodia, or you're in America, right? It is about citizens helping their fellow citizens live financially secure lives. You're not manufacturing widgets. You're helping your fellow citizens, regardless of where in the value chain. You could be an agent, you could be an advisor, you could be configuring a firewall, you could be slinging code, right? But at the end of the day, you're contributing to something much larger than you. And I think that's, again, it's an understated fact that regardless of where in the value chain you are, regardless of where in the world you are, if you're part of this industry, you're part of something much bigger than yourself. People talk about the inherent nobility of the industry, and I think that's the important part.
No, I love that perspective, and I think it's so important to say, don't create everything brand new. There's so much we can learn and leverage from each other, and what a great position you're in to be really having a global view of all of that.
LIMRA LOMA.
Yeah,
LIMRA LOMA.
absolutely.
I think it's the gold standard of all associations across the industry, right? It's just we're privileged to be able to do what we do, and have been for the past aggregate of 200 years. LIMRA has been around for LOMA celebrating, been around over 100 years. LIMRA has been around over 100 years. LIMRA and LOMA merged in 2007, effectively forming the largest and oldest nonprofit trade association on the planet. I mean, it's just remarkable.
I'm glad we're filming this not too far from the LIMRA headquarters.
Yeah. Yes. I hope you do pay a visit.
It is true, though, but every carrier, every distribution we work with, LIMRA LOMA is a common, everyone knows LIMRA and LOMA.
Across the world.
It's just like, absolutely. And
Yeah.
so it's like, you don't have to talk about, the importance of it. It's like, it's just known. That's kind of an amazing testament to what you guys have been doing.
It's the trust, right? It's by the industry for the industry, right? Our raison d'etre is to be able to make everybody successful.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think it's super, super important. I know we said this at the beginning of the episode, that you're in a unique position to talk about this because you have no horse in the race.
Right.
You're not saying this so that a certain solutions provider could win or a certain carrier could beat other carriers.
Yeah.
You're an objectively neutral, fair, and credible source of information, advice, and training.
Yeah.
Positively move the industry forward.
100%.
Yeah.
Advance.
It's such a privilege to have you here today, Kartik. Thank you so much for
Thank you for
coming
having
and spending
me.
the
It was a
time.
ton of
so
fun.
much.
We should do this again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.